All right, guys, we are going to be doing a breakdown of one of the most iconic horror movies of the past decade. Excuse me, 2 decades, right? I mean, seriously, this movie has it all. It has great action, a great script, amazing characters. All the characters bring their A game, even some of the smaller characters. Every time they're on screen, you feel what they feel. And when they speak, you feel the conviction they're trying to convince the audience. This film was directed by Frank Darabont. Excuse me if I said that shit wrong. And of course, this movie has his greasy little hands on it by Stephen King, aka the GOAT of all horror stories. So, folks, you already know it's about to be good. Also, this movie is adapted by the 1980s novel that came out from Stephen A. King called The Mist. All right, that's enough info, you bastards. We start off the film with our main protagonist named David seeming to work on his art. When you look a little closely, you see a portrait, and it's the iconic image from a fan favorite movie, The Thing. So right off the bat, our director is paying homage to horror film classics that came before them. So it feels like we're already in good hands. This man knows what he's doing. We hear some classical jazz music playing. Then the audience starts to notice that there's clearly a huge storm on its way. But our protagonist, David, doesn't even seem to notice. He seems so caught up in his painting. He's clearly passionate about his skill. And the only reason he's even stopping because he notices the lights turns off. David and the audience look outside, and there's clearly a lot of 2000 CGI bullshit going on. And this is no hate. I actually kind of appreciate the view. It has a very uniqueness to its also cheap production value. Then we are introduced by his clearly wife and his son. The camera shows all three of them looking outside at how horrible the weather is. So right then, we start to feel like this is going to be a 3-person film. Oh boy, how we were wrong. I'll get back to that later. As the family goes hides for shelter, we then see a big-ass tree that pops in their window. Not only is the director showing us that this storm is nothing to be to play with, but it also has an ominous feeling, like something's really about to go wrong. The next day, the audience is shown how bad the destruction was. Trees, branches. I'm going to be real, the house looks fucked up. But yet our main protagonist, David, is actually kind of calm, clearly showing that he doesn't want to panic in front of his son and his wife. Now, you can make the case that the actors are just warming up in the film and that this is just a little bit bad acting, but I'm not so sure. Even his wife seems kind of calm in the sense that they know that everything's going to be okay because they believe in each other. Right off the bat, the director is showing that this family is close and has very great love for each other. He says, as long as we are safe, we'll always be good. I gotta say, I love the foreshadowing in this film. I always found the chemistry between the husband and the wife very satisfying. Also, the kid comes off as a little spazzy, quirky, but kind of cute. We come to find out that one of their sheds has actually been destroyed. And the big-ass tree that did it was actually the tree from the neighbor who they politely asked to take down. So we already know we're not going to like his dumbass neighbor. That is when the wife notices that there is a mist near the mountains. And it's a very strange occurrence, I'm assuming, because they're acting all strange about it. I'm not really a mist expert, so that would kind of look normal to me, but it doesn't look normal to them, so I'm just going to go with the mist expert. The husband actually makes a joke and says, well, honey, I'm not the weatherman. Basically saying, what the fuck do you want me to do about it? But what I can do, honey, is talk to this neighbor and talk that shit, because he didn't put that goddamn tree away. And now we got a fucked up shed. We didn't have our protagonist actually approach the neighbor, and look who it is. Captain Holt Ray from Brooklyn 999. As you know, you always get that kind of feeling when you see some of your favorite actors in old films and watch how they progress through their acting career. It's a good feeling. So you get this feeling when you watch him basically fucking yelling and trying to fuck up this tree because this motherfucker is pissed. I mean, the neighbor is cussing up a storm. But as you know, he did tell him to cut that tree down, so he's already pissed. So he's already on demon time. He's already rehearsed every single line he is going to use on this motherfucker. Finally, the neighbor, whose name is Brent, finally notices the protagonist character, David. Our protagonist tells the neighbor that he believes it's a good idea that they trade insurance because it was his tree that messed up his boathouse. The neighbor, Brent, looks in awe at first, like, you really came over here to start this? But eventually chuckles it off and says, oh, my insurance company's gonna love this, making it seem like he's actually not as bad as we were thought to believe in the past. But after all the charming little moments, we start to realize that neighbor Brent is actually an asshole. The neighbor asks for a ride, and that is when they hit the road. As they're driving and chatting and talking about the weather, the audience notices that there's a bunch of trucks coming their way. You see at least about 5 or 6 of them, but they look like they're supposed to work on the power. That is when then we're later shown that there is 5 military trucks passing their way. And these soldiers mean business. They are armed and ready. By the time we are shown the military trucks, it has only been 6 minutes and 53 seconds inside the movie. Frank, the director, is slowly placing these little foreshadowings. It's really amazing storytelling. Right off the bat, the characters notice that this is strange. Why is the military? But a few seconds later, it's revealed that this is actually a military town. While the neighbor asks what really goes down there. The neighbor starts questioning a little more. He says, what do you think there's up there? Aliens? Monsters? Then that's when they see 2 more military trucks zooming past them. He even asks, I wonder if they're out of power too. As you get to know Brent more, you realize that this is actually a smart brother and that this dude is rich for a reason. But he also has an arrogance about him. So he probably came from a place where he had to work his butt off 10 times as harder and now has a chip on his shoulder. You can make the case the only reason he's even being this charming is because he knows that his car was destroyed and he has to rely on his neighbor, David, to drive him to go get more supplies. What I like next about this scene is the kid actually asks his father, can he go with the neighbor, Brent? The dude he's been beefing with for a good minute. Now he is put in an awkward position to decide if he wants his son to be around a person he really doesn't know too well about. Also, a person he has had issues with in the past until now. But to show good faith to the neighbor Brent, he says as long as you hold his hand. And the neighbor Brent looks to our main protagonist and gives him a head nod and says, I got your son. The head nod from the neighbor symbolizes that whatever beef they had in the past is going to be on pause. It's a very good scene because now he has trust in him to take care of his son for at least a moment. It was a great moment showing that 2 people on the opposite sides can come together for one common goal, and that is to protect the loved one. Our main character tries to use a payphone and realizes that the power is still out, which is still very strange. He then heads into the grocery store where we start to meet our different side characters, such as Allie. Apparently, she is a babysitter of the couple. We then meet Ollie, who personally has the best moment in television history. You motherfuckers know what I'm talking about. But we'll get to that. We then meet Miss Carmody. At first, she comes off a little pretentious, but not too harmful. David eventually finds Brent and his son chilling in the aisle. You see our main protagonist get a huge calm of relief when he finds his son and his neighbor fine, and he's not being no weirdo. Or that basically the neighbor has not lost his son, or that the son was not by himself. Our main protagonist, David, and the audience realize that, hey, maybe we can trust this neighbor, Brent, and maybe he's not such a bad guy. The son asks if David and the neighbor will be friends. He tries to play it off cool as it is not really a big deal, and saying friends is a stretch, but we saw that little smirk. That is when three military guys walk in. One of them is eyeing the cashier, Allie. It looks like he has a thing for her. But it looks like she kind of feeling him a little herself. They were both cheesing at each other. This lets the audience know that there is something definitely going on in the air. And their chemistry for that small few moments lets us know that they have a history. And it's very believable. So kudos to the director because it's 10 minutes and 17 seconds and we have got all these different connections, all these different emotions that we are feeling from these characters that we have only known for 10 minutes. In 10 minutes, we have learned that our main character is a family guy who probably has good morals and that he's willing to fight for his family. We also learned that our neighbor is really not that much of an asshole if he trusts you. Also, we have the friendly kid who clearly gets his personality from his dad. He has a trusting nature about him. We are introduced to an older lady. That is when she calls our character by name, letting us know that they are familiar with each other. That is when we hear the kid actually make a joke that the neighbor's house got caved in by a tree. Of course, our main character is basically like a modern version of Hank Hill. He looks at the neighbor to make sure that he does not take offense to it. That is when we notice that the neighbor is randomly staring outside, almost like he's in a trance. That is when we see the military police car show up. A police officer steps out the vehicle. Like I said earlier in the film, again, the neighbor character seems very astute. He always seems very aware of his surroundings. This would also make sense why earlier in the film, when he is startled by the character David, he reacts and looks at him crazy, almost as if, how did you sneak up on me, motherfucker? That is when we see Andrea from The Walking Dead, baby, looking thirsty, looking at our main protagonist, giving him the eye. Andrea is so damn thirsty. No, but seriously, folks, she is trying to throw it at old boy. But you can clearly tell he is a family man, and even though he probably finds her attractive, he ain't gonna risk his family, and especially he ain't gonna disrespect his son like that. Us, the audience, then start seeing the military police start congregating in front of each other. The military officer who clearly stepped out, the one that our neighbors saw, is clearly the one in charge. He starts telling them what they need to do, then dips out in his car. A few seconds later, that's when we hear a very large alarm, clearly military graded. And by the way the people are reacting in the grocery store, the audience can tell that this is a very serious and dire situation. And the only reason they would be playing that alarm is to basically say, all hell has broke loose. Everybody starts to look nervous, scared, terrified. That's when they see a man running towards the grocery store, and he's full of blood, scared. He keeps on looking back. Everybody don't even want to let that motherfucker in, but he goes in anyway. He tells the people in the grocery store to shut the doors, that he remembered his friend named John Lee, and then they took him. He still repeats himself, still saying there's something in the mist. A person runs for it. He's terrified. He thinks he can make it. That is when it zooms in, and while he's running to his car, you see others running, while the mist engulfs people. The man who decided to risk his life and go to the car also gets engulfed by the mist. You hear screams mixed with the large siren bells. We are clearly in hell now. After hearing those screams, the people in the grocery store have never looked so terrified. Andrea looks like she's about to shit herself. Then the grocery store starts to tremble, starts to shake. The people in there start to fall on the ground. For some reason, it seems like there's an earthquake in the mist. People start doing more panicking, scared. They don't have no clue what the fuck is going on. That is when we fucking see Carol from The fucking Walking Dead. You literally got Carol and Andrea from The fucking Walking Dead in this bitch. And I mean that in a good way. This scene is also fucking awesome because it really makes us realize that they have two Walking Dead legends on the same set. Gotta say, that's badass. Until you kind of realize that they got Carol doing the whole kid trope again. She starts to let the audience know that her kids are stuck by themselves at the house and that one of the kids is forgetful. She starts to beg for help. Please, someone help me. Of course, nobody wants to help her ass. They just fucking heard a guy come in and said that they took one of his friends in the mist. Carol, I'm sorry. You gotta sit your ass down, baby. The audience starts to feel sorry for Carol. We actually understand that who would want to leave their kids behind. That is until the character who came in speaking about the mist, he tells her, if you want to save him, you basically better stay your ass put. Okay, I'm sorry. This is one of the most funniest scenes throughout the whole movie. Carol basically starts begging, starts saying, please, please help me. She starts looking around. You have people in the grocery store putting their heads down because of shame. But she looks at one of the store managers. This fool just like slowly shook his head and was just like basically saying, no, I'm not going to help you. Very funny scene indeed. Also, when she starts to look around, people also start putting their heads down. And she makes this disgusting looking face at the neighbor. I was like, what the fuck? Then she looks at our main protagonist. He tells her straight up to her face, I have my own kid I have to worry about. So, of course, you know, she's pretty pissed off. I mean, it's pretty understandable. Basically, everybody's saying, fuck you. She then makes her way to the door and says, I hope you all burn in hell. They try to force her to stay. But, of course, you cannot force a mother who wants to get to their kids. So she goes out there. You can tell she is nervous. And the audience is nervous for her. But you will do whatever it takes to protect your kids. And she definitely conveys that message very strong and clearly. Because not only is she scared as shit, she also knows that she's probably never going to even see her daughter. You get that vibe before she runs off to the mist. And people look down as she leaves, as they're ashamed of themselves that they let a woman go out there by herself to go fend by herself. Our main character decides to go to the back of the grocery store where they do their trucking. He starts to hear the noise come from the garage doors. That is when he tries to alert the other people in the grocery store of what he's seen and what he's heard. While talking to some of the locals apparently don't believe him. And they also show that they're clearly jealous of him when he tries to show them what is down there. They think it's some Hollywood prank on them, and they take it personal. One of the workers who works at the grocery stores is a young man. He volunteers to figure out what is going on. He tries to fight with our main character and say that he's not some kid, basically. Our main character advises against the local adults who push him to actually go figure out what the issue is outside. When they open the door, not only do they see the mist, but they see a long tentacle come out and grab the young man. He starts basically ripping him apart. And the only person who jumps in action at first is our main protagonist. You can clearly tell he knew the shit was going to go wrong, so he was one of the first to react. Also, you could say that his fatherhood skills kicked in and realized that this young man who he tried to advise against did something very stupid. And since he has a child of his own son, he sympathizes for this young man who's about to get his ass ate the fuck up. So he jumps into action and grabs him, but the long tentacle is basically destroying this young man's body. The tentacle starts stabbing the young man's stomach, the chest area, the legs. You can clearly tell the young man is in pain. That is when one of my favorite characters, Ollie, hops in and starts to actually try to help the situation. That is when the audience notices that the people who pushed the young man to go open up the door are actually not even helping. They look terrified, scared. They look like they made a big mistake, but they're too much of a pussies to actually help out. Basically, the tentacle, whatever the fuck that thing was, tears the young man apart, drags him outside, but with one last attempt, our main protagonist tries to save him, but it was too late. The audience sees the large tentacle drag the young man outside of the garage door while he screams in pain. While the tentacles start taking over the garage area, the people down there start frantic. Of course, the people who push the young man to his death are still acting like pussies and hiding in the corner. While our main protagonist figures out the situation, and he actually uses a broom to close the door, which takes out the tentacles outside of the garage. He even chops one of the tentacles off to make sure to keep a little souvenir to figure out what the fuck it is. Once the situation is solved, we actually see the person, the local who actually pushed the kid to his death, he starts to realize that he fucked up and starts to, make the situation worse. He starts talking too much, basically asking our main character, well, you should have told me what you meant and we would have never got that kid killed. Of course, our main protagonist reacts in a very positive way, in my opinion, and punches him in the face and punches him in the stomach. This is the first time we see our character actually kind of lose his cool. After he beats the hell out of him, they keep on apologizing and keep on doing more apologizing. This is a little strange, but I guess I get it. If you got a kid killed and the dude's holding you accountable, you would probably apologize like a lot of times too. So it makes sense. After his 9th time apologizing, the main character responds by saying that we still have to tell them about Norm, the young man who died. And we also have to let him know that there are huge tentacles outside. He doesn't even really know where to start. Like he mentions in the movie, where do those tentacles even come from? Basically asking, what are they even attached to? While going over their game plan, they realize that they're actually really in a shitty situation. The windows that are protecting them are not really super strong. It could be easily breakable. If those big tentacles can get through that garage door, what do you think they're going to do to some cheap ass glass? He even brings Andrea from Walking Dead into the fold. And personally, this is where things get kind of weird for me, because the movie forgets about his wife. I know he's a very calm and collected character, and he doesn't want to scare his son, but he doesn't really seem to miss his wife. He also doesn't really mention her. This movie kind of forgets about her, honestly. It's like we just assume that she's dead. That is one thing that kind of rubbed me off about this movie. It just kind of forgets about his love life previously, and he kind of flirts with Andrea from Walking Dead. It's kind of weird. He just randomly takes his shirt off in front of her, and she's just checking him out. I gotta say, that was a little strange. Our main character tries to bring our neighbor into the fold. But of course, he's very skeptical, and he does not believe them at first glance. While looking at our main character explain this situation and the other locals, our neighbor starts to feel even more skeptical. He starts to look at the locals' face and notice that there's a goofy ass look on their face. But he doesn't realize the locals just look like that. And also they're very kind of
even when our main character tries to appeal to him,
a young man
and tells him, bro, please get your head up
our
out
neighbor
your
begins
ass.
to
We are
think
not trying
that
to
the
play a
main
prank on
character
you.
has curated
He
a
takes
trick on
another
him
offense
to get back at him.
And
for
when our
suing
main
him.
character tries to grab
He thinks
him,
everyone
he
is
pushes
in
him
on the
off
joke and
and
he's
says, "Do
being
not touch
made
me, do
fun
not
of
touch
and
me."
is being used. The director subtly puts it in the film without coming out and saying it.
It is
that our
unfortunate
neighbor
because our main
believes
character is
that our
white,
main character
and
and the
he does
locals
seem to
are
be
playing
very
a trick
well
on him
fond
because he is a
of
black
the
man.
neighbor.
And
To
that
bring him in the
maybe
fold
they are
definitely
jealous
proves
of
that
the
he
neighbor,
has somewhat trust
and
of
this
him.
is their time to
But
make him look like a
unfortunately, our
fool.
neighbor has his
But
guard
when our
up
main
and
character
does not
tells him to
believe
get
in
his
the
stick
idea
out his
that there
ass,
are
you would think that the neighbor catches on and realizes this is no joke. But when our main character puts his hands on him, he freaks
tries to give
out
Ollie orders,
and
but
tells
Ollie
him to get his
basically tells him to
goddamn
put a
hands off
can
of
in
him.
it and shut the fuck
He even
up.
looks at the other people around him and says, "Look, he assaulted me." You can tell that our neighbor
Eventually,
has
the main
issues.
character convinces people to go down.
Maybe in his past he has
before that,
confrontation
we have
with
to
a
see
white
Miss
person who also tried to make a
the
joke
one who
out
I
of it.
told you kind of
You
came
can
off
tell
as
he's going through
pretentious.
trauma while going through this situation. Eventually, our main character convinces the store manager to come in the back. That's when the store manager sees a lot of blood and also sees the tentacles left from the monster. Now, any person with average intelligence would also try to doubt the same thing, that this is a real situation. I'm not gonna lie, even the tentacles look fake. But this also shows the audience that the people in the grocery store are basically trying to come up with ideas that this has to be some type of trick, when in reality, their situation is way worse than they think. Mind you, at this time, only a few of them have seen this tentacle monster. Majority of them have no idea what is going on. All they know is that there's a lot of mist coming around the store. There was large, loud alarms made by the military, and that a man came from the mist saying that one of his friends got caught by the mist. Of course, you're going to be skeptical. Also, this movie came out around 2006, 2007, which is a year that was also known for pranks. So it wouldn't be that surprising that these characters would be skeptical about the situation. That is when we get a look into Miss Cambody. She is in the bathroom praying to Jesus. Except this is not a kind of good faith prayer. This is more like a prayer that give me the sign so I can lead these sheep. It is clearly shown that Miss Cambody has some type of mental illness. Or maybe she just believes in God. At first glance, it just seems that she just really has a good relationship with God and is nervous about the situation. Until we see Andrea come in the restroom and overhears her speaking. When Andrea hears her, that's when Miss Cambody turns around and tries to exit the restroom. But Andrea wants to let the Miss Cambody know that everything is going to be all right, and if she needs a friend to talk to, she will be there for her. This is where we start to see the cracks in Miss Cambody's personality. Instead of saying, "Oh, well, thank you, ma'am, you too," she freaks out and thinks Andrea is being condescending towards her. And she tells her she does not need her support, and that anytime she will ever need a friend like her, she can basically just crap one out. While the one-liner by Miss Cambody was pretty good, it also shows us that she is clearly not mentally well. And before that scene, you also see a couple scenes of Miss Cambody coming out sprouting that it's the devil's work. And you low-key see her get a small fan base hearing her out, but it's in the beginning of the apocalypse. After the store owner goes downstairs to check the mess to see if this is actually a real event, the neighbors still feel skeptical about the situation and assumes it is still a joke. That is when Miss Cambody pitches in and says, "No, my dear, this is a real situation, and the reason this is because of the devil." She's basically saying this is God's reckoning. He is punishing us for all the evil we have done in the past, and this is the end. She tells the neighbor this is the will of God, and there is no court appeals in hell, suggesting that our neighbor is a lawyer. While our main protagonist and Ali are trying to help up the grocery store to make the fort more solitude, she is still preaching, while others are watching in the background, all curious-like. The reason I like her character at this moment is because it is a realistic take on the apocalypse. There would be a person who would feel like this is a spiritual and godly event. Also, she does come off as convincing. That is when our skeptical neighbor starts to suggest that if anybody believes in rationality, you can come follow me. While some of the members in the grocery store are starting to pitch in and stack dog food against the windows, we see a very nervous and scared woman. She is clearly trying to find a solution to why this is going on. That is when you see her start getting closer to Miss Cambody, basically showing the audience that she does have the potential to outreach different people. That is when she pulls out her Bible and starts to read verses from the Bible, a very strong scripture called Revelations. The temple was filled with smoke from the glory of God. That is also when you notice one of the locals who got Ron, the grocery store clerk, killed. You see him watching from afar. You can tell this man doesn't really have too much intelligence and he can be easily swayed. The man who came from the outside into the grocery store and started describing the actually confronts Miss Cambody and tells her, "What do you suggest then?" And her answer is that the people in the grocery store just accept their fate and do not try to fight it, because this is God's will. Miss Cambody suggests, if you doubt me, how about you take your happy ass outside and see how truly wrong I am? This is starting to make people nervous. You also see our main character's son also start to doubt his father's intentions as well. This young man looks terrified, and again, for some reason, they keep on avoiding talking about the mother. Andrea suggests that Miss Cambodi is actually scaring the children. That's when she replies they should be scared. We're in hell, bitch. She even goes up to a random child and starts stroking the little girl's hair while the mother watches behind and actually seems like she is fine with it. It seems like she is also buying into Miss Cambodi's preaching. She states there is only one God, and that is the God of the Israelites. There's no such thing as a modern God. She states that we have been mocking God for too damn long, and now he is fed up, and now he requires blood, death, and sacrifice. She tells her there will be another sacrifice after the young grocery clerk has died. That is when Andrea steps in and slaps the hell out of her. That is when the local actually suggests, oh, so you can slap her, but I can't. After the slap, she suggests that they will still come tonight. And when they do, and that you will cry to God. That is where we see that our main protagonist, boy, actually peeps in while the military guys are talking amongst each other. This is strange because instead of watching the shit show, they seem like they are talking about a plan. That is when my favorite character, Arlie, steps in and tells Miss Cambodi, if you don't shut your mouth, I will put some damn tape on it. We are tired of your shit. Miss Cambodi tells Arlie, you better try it. She then turns to Andrea and tells her, you hit me again if you dare. Showing not only is this a righteous woman, but she got a little thug in her. The director is showing the audience that Miss Cambodi is not afraid of a fight and she believes in her convictions. And even though she is a woman of God, she also will go violent if necessary to protect herself and to protect her preaching of the Lord and Savior. She tells Andrea, you will be on your knees before me, before this ends. Basically suggesting to the audience either she will fall in line with Miss Cambodi's preaching or she's going to get her ass stomped out. That is when Ali suggests that for those who are not locals, Miss Cambodi is actually known for having these crazy, unstable ideas. Basically suggesting to the audience that this is normal behavior for Miss Cambodi. At this time of the movie, it suggests that even though she has a small following, majority of the people in the grocery store are not buying what she is selling. That is when our main protagonist, David Kidd, finds the military and approaches them, asking them if everything is okay and why can't their friends come pick them up. One of the military members replies that the phones still do not work. That's when our main protagonist shows up and asks the military members could they lend a helping hand, because basically they're just sitting on their ass. That is when it's shown to the audience that the little boy is actually scared of Miss Cambodi for a good reason. Our main character, David, instead of actually making her out as a monster, an evil, psycho, crazy woman, he tells the little boy that she is scared and terrified, and that this is a common reaction for people who are scared of the unknown. This shows our main character is still full of optimism, and that he knows how to talk to his child without scaring him. Finally, the boy asks, what about mom? He tells the little boy that his mom loves him very much and that she is probably fine. But we as the audience know that that's not the case. He even tells his son that no matter what, he will try everything in his power to get back to his mother and his wife. I will have to say this is the first time where our main character does not look convincing. He looks nervous, bothered, not calm. He looks like he doesn't even believe his own lies. They start to go over what type of weapons do they have. That's when people start suggesting that they have guns. One member in the grocery store states that he has a shotgun in his truck outside. Of course, our main protagonist says that is not a good idea for him to stay put. That is when it is shown that Andrea from The Walking Dead basically has her own piece. And it is revealed that she actually has a husband that she say that is always out on business. This is a very strange revelation because why was she looking at our main protagonist like she wanted to take off his clothes? Typical Andrea.
It also makes me believe that maybe she has that gun for her own protection against her husband. Because being completely honest, she does not seem like a happy, merrily woman.
When asked who knows how to use the gun, that is when Ali steps in. Of course, the store owner, who does not respect Ali, states that, "Come on, Ali, what are you doing?" Thus showing the audience that the store owner does not believe in Ali's capabilities to do anything, and that he sees him more as a joke. He says he was doing target shooting and was a state champion of '94. That is when it's shown that our neighbor is trying to leave. Of course, the people in the grocery store think it's not a great idea, but he starts to say that my people are trying to leave. That is when Andrea steps in and says, "My people, we're all humans." But it has shown that the neighbor basically sees this as a side versus side issue, and that his training in the court system is coming out to play. The neighbor states that it is some disaster. Either it could be a natural disaster, but it's definitely not a spiritual disaster or a biblical disaster. That is when he apologizes to Miss Cambodi and says no offense. That is when you see an image of her looking in the back, smirking. It's weird. It seems like the little interaction between the two, she has a somewhat respect for the character. Maybe not much, but it's still there. Our main protagonist asks the neighbor for a favor, says can he tie some rope around his body that reaches out to 300 feet to see if he will make it. That is when one of the members in the grocery store, who's clearly a motorcyclist, he gives off a kind of badass vibe. He says he will go outside. That's when one of the members suggests you're actually buying this shit. He tells him no. He believes the neighbor is a little too tightly wound and eventually is going to get someone killed. He is more interested in the idea of going outside and getting the shotgun. This man clearly wants to get this shit over with. That is when the person with the shotgun goes up to the motorcyclist and tells him, "Son, you have brass balls." Basically letting the audience know that our guy, motorcyclist dude, is clearly a badass.
Ali tries to give the motorcyclist a little small knife to use for protection. That is when he pulls out an even bigger knife that looks like a hunting knife. Basically showing that I'm good, bro.
That is when our main protagonist, David, tries to reach out to the neighbor one more time, stating, "Is there any way I can talk you out of this?" That is when our neighbor looks around and says, "There is nothing in the mist." Our neighbor truly believes he is in the right and that the others are crazy, and that there has to be a logical reasoning for all this. While our neighbor is shown being an intelligent man, the fact that he is not able to grasp the situation is a little concerning. The fact that he always believes that there has to be a reason will slowly be the end of his demise. Our main protagonist asks the neighbor, "Well, what if you're wrong?" That is when the neighbor pauses with a smirk and says, "I guess the joke will be on me then." That is when our main protagonist slowly backs away and realizes there is no saving this man, and that maybe he is on a death wish, and that the man that he was forming a friendship with is truly lost, and there is no point in trying to save him anymore. It is kind of sad because we are shown that our main protagonist believes in helping people to the very end. And watching him give up all hope on this man is generally unsettling. Before he exits, he says, "We'll send help." That's when Miss Cambodi sends her last message as, "Y'all will all die out there. All of you." Of course, the neighbor gives her a look like, "Bitch, please." That is when he steps outside and has a face of arrogance, but also you can tell he looks nervous. Instead of turning back around, this definitely looks like a man who will go all out for his plan to not be proven wrong. That is when the motorcyclists actually exit out as well. He turns to Miss Cambodi and tells her, "I believe in God too. I just don't believe he's the freaking evil, thirsty, blood-sucking son of a bitch that you believe he is." That is when Miss Cambodi comes back with a quick quip, basically saying, "Oh, okay. Well, how about you put that up with the devil, because you're going to eventually meet his ass pretty soon." The audience is shown what the world looks like outside in the mist, and you cannot see anything. All you see is just clouds and mist. You can tell the people who decide to go outside look nervous, but there's no turning back now. We are shown seeing the members inside the grocery store holding the rope to figure out how far he is going. That is when out of nowhere, the rope starts speeding up fast and our main protagonist gets a rope burn.
letting us know that there is something at the end of the rope, and it's not human. While having his hands peeled back, our main protagonist still holds on to the rope while one of the older lady hands him a towel, still showing us that our main protagonist is full of bravery, especially when it comes down to helping people. We are shown the people who are helping inside being pulled to the door. This is clearly not a human. This is a monster on the end. And they look terrified, as they should be. That is when we are seeing that the end of the rope outside is actually being pulled upwards, as if the person who is at the end of it is in the air. This is a scary revelation, because how the hell did the rope go from the bottom on the ground all the way to the top of the door, suggesting that whatever that is legitly flying. That is when the rope breaks. When our main protagonist is pulling the rope, that's when we see a line of blood. And the more closer the rope is being pulled by our main protagonist, the more blood you see. That is when you see more of the members in the grocery store start to panic. That is when the audience is shown that there is a half a body attached to the rope. This man is legitimately missing his upper torso and his head. There is no man anymore. Of course, Miss Cambodi goes into preacher mode right off the bat and suggests, now do you see, to our main protagonist. We are shown the cashier register out in the military man who was flirting with her earlier having an interaction. Obviously, it comes off as awkward because they are dealing with literally fucking whatever the fuck that is outside. They start to inquire about each other's lives. She asks if he is scared of the military, and he asks where is her family. We then get a moment where she asks the military guy, why have you never asked me out? She puts him on blast and says, we flirted all through high school, and I know you like me. She starts to lean in for the kiss, basically showing the audience that she is actually terrified and knows this might be her last romantic encounter. She does have a brief recognition of the situation and stops herself and leans back and says, I'm sorry, maybe this is not the best idea for this to happen. I mean, no shit, the apocalypse is about to go on. The military man suggests that maybe they should just talk, showing that he is truly a gentleman. That is when we are shown the members inside the grocery store are looking outside at the window to make sure nothing comes in. While the camera focuses on the store owner starting to eat some food, we see a bug in the background flying towards the character. As it gets closer, we can tell this is no ordinary bug. This looks like it's from out of this world. And of course, it startles the store manager. Panic ensues. The store manager calls over David in a frantic mode, still letting us know that people in the grocery store see David as the leader. That is when we see more of these mutant bugs coming towards the window. And if I'm being completely honest, these things look like they were pulled straight out from the Bible. So now Miss Cambodi is really starting to look like less crazy. These are not normal bugs. Even the store manager asks, are those bugs? That's when Andrea replies, not any bugs I've ever seen. Of course, Miss Cambodi takes a wheel of the opportunity that is presented upon her. She starts quoting Bible verses and suggesting that these bugs are lotuses. This is one of the times in the film where Miss Cambodi actually looks like she is in the right, and that maybe this could be a biblical event. The fact that this is going on late as night sets the atmosphere of creepiness all the way to the max. The camera pans in into the group in the grocery store, showing all different emotions and facial expressions. And of course, everyone looks terrified, shocked, confusion. You get the feeling that the members inside the grocery store knows that some crazy shit is about to happen. And boy, were they right. A few seconds later, we see a big-ass monster heading towards the window. That is when we hear Ollie say, holy shit. This looks like a mini gargoyle. This also suggests to the audience, this is the thing that took the motorcycle dude. It slams right in the window, making a crack and a dent. Not only do they have to worry about big-ass squid tentacles and little big-ass lotus bugs, they also have to worry about gargoyles. Everybody starts to scramble and panic. That's when Ollie suggests that the bugs are attracted to the light. You start to see people running and hurting themselves. You also see one woman fall on the ground after tripping and her shoulder is hurt. You hear Miss Cambodia in one of the aisles reading her scriptures. As the bugs get closer and start attacking the window, we realize that our main protagonist knows that this is it and suggests to Ollie that the windows are about to give. This is the moment Miss Cambodia was suggesting earlier in the film, suggesting that they will come one night and that it is this night. They also have ominous music playing in the background, saying, ooh, ah, ooh. That is when our big flying monster cracks open the window, letting all the other bugs in. And this is where chaos ensues. One of the bugs come in and tries to attack Andrea when she slaps it with the rake and steps on it. She eventually kills it, but she has to put a lot of effort into it. Again, suggesting these are not normal bugs. Unfortunately, the first victim is the cashier, Allie. We see the bug making its way towards her when it stabs her in the neck. The military man, who is clearly in love with her, makes his way over there and suggests everything's going to be okay. But we know that it won't. Her body starts shaking. Andrea suggests Ollie to shoot the big-ass bird that has came in, and unfortunately he doesn't have a good shot, making the audience wonder if he was actually lying about his shooting skills. But he follows instead anyway. That's when we are shown our main protagonist is trying to set a mop on fire to counter these mutant bugs and big-ass birds. This is probably one of my favorite scenes throughout the movie. You see so much panic and chaos ensue between the people inside the grocery store. You have people running for their lives. And it has already been shown that if one of these things attach themselves to you, you are more likely going to die. We then see Ollie pointing the gun at anybody because he's really trying to kill this big ass thing. He even accidentally points the gun at a mother and the children, and they start to scream. He's like, oh shit. We see one of the giant birds hop on one of the customers' back inside the grocery store and starts going down on the back of his neck, removing all types of ligaments and blood fragments. That's when our main protagonist gets the mop with fire and starts to head towards the thing. That is when we are shown to another scene of the military man trying to help out Allie, but it's too late. Her body is getting bigger. Her mouth is getting bigger. It looks like she is choking. It looks like she is having an allergy reaction. That is when we see the life is gone out of her eyes. We are then shown another man who is trying to run to help out. When he tries to set the mop on fire, he trips and basically burns himself. Even though this scene comes off as a little goofy at first, if you put yourself in that position, you could understand that a simple mistake can easily happen like that. We see Andrea and our main protagonist teaming up together to take down the monster bird. This is why I like this scene so much, because it shows the characters working together to try to solve this huge problem on their hands. Everybody has their assignment. Now they just got to get the job done. Now it does seem like the fire is having effect on the monster bird, but it is still flying around. We see our main protagonist trying to hit the bird with a bat while missing. This bird is clearly agile. While going through the different lanes, causing a mess, we see a glimpse of our main protagonist, David's little boy. And he sees his usually calm father reacting hysterically. We see more scenes of our main protagonist beating the bird to death. It seemed like his strikes are having an effect on the mutant animal. Finally, the Burning Man gets put out by an extinguisher. That is where we see a very nervous Miss Cambodia have one of the little bugs fall on her stomach. While everybody watches in the background, they almost seem to forget that they still have a bunch of other shit, that's still coming in. But they are curious to see if this lady is really about that God life. And maybe to see if she is the Messiah. We see the bug slowly crawling up on her. And we also see how nervous and scared and terrified she is. While the bug gets closer to her neck, where we know they like to sting, she starts to say, my life for you, suggesting that she is willing to give herself up for the greater good. Well, her greater good, at least. Your will be done. That is when the bug, for some reason, decides to get off of her body and fly away. The director doesn't even have to tell us. At that moment, we are 100% sure that she is about to get more people on her side. All that shit talking she was doing, and everybody was thinking she was crazy, And then this bug doesn't even sting her. It just flies away. Almost like you did your will. You did the teachings. So we will let you survive. As a man who likes to think logically, you can't even blame people for turning to her side after this event. At that moment, it truly looks like the bug allowed her to live because she has been doing the teachings and she is a believer of the Lord Almighty. She puts her hands up in the air while panic still ensues. That is when we have seen Ali pull up on one of the big birds. He gets a shot off from a little far distance, suggesting that Ali might be about that shooting life, and that it was wrong to have any preconceived notions about him. Ali is a badass, and we are starting to see it. Don't let them thick-ass glasses fool you now. That is when we see the young protagonist, the little boy, step away from his caregiver, the one who was watching her while the husband and father had to jump into action. He escapes while a frantic older woman who was supposed to watch over her starts to scream out for his name. Of course, he is looking for his father. And that is when we are still shown the main protagonist going ham on the bird that is lit on fire, and he is going ham with a bat and beating the hell out of it. Ali starts to follow the wounded bird that he shot to another aisle. That is where we are shown that the bird is heading towards the main protagonist's son. And now we're getting terrified. Could this be the end for the young man? We see the image of Ali in the background sizing up the target, while we see the bird approach the young man. At the last second, we are shown the father, our main protagonist, coming around the corner, trying to look for his son after he hears his name. That is when we see Ali looking very focused. He knows he has one shot, and he needs to make it count, or that little boy is gone. That is when our main protagonist grabs the young boy and gets him out of the way so Ali can get a clean shot. And boom. We are shown that our main protagonist is terrified again. And he actually looks at the woman he gave orders to watch his son, as in, bitch, really? You can tell by the look of his eyes that after this incident, that he's not going to be so willing trusting his little child around other people. And that it's obvious his child needs to be with him 24/7 and cannot leave his sight. We hear screams and cries in the background while you see other members of the group trying to board up the building, well, what is left. We also get a last image of Ali, the cashier register, who is on the ground dead, and we see one of the military men who was in love with her crying on the ground and distraught as well. That is when all hell starts to break loose again. Instead of having to worry about the monsters, now we have to worry about Miss Cambody. I mean, she was right all along, right? That is when one of the members states in the grocery store that we should listen to her, and she was right all along, and that she predicted this. Maybe Miss Cambody is our Messiah, our Savior. That is what is running through these people's mind. Her follower says that she told us someone will die. You goddamn right. More than one person died though, bitch. We are shown the motorcyclist's body outside when we start hearing growling and very loud noises. That is when the body is pulled away, suggesting that there could even be a more terrifying creature out at night. We see the young boy, while in dream state, call out for his mother. And you have Andrea already holding him, saying that it will be okay. Again, I'm being completely honest. It does not seem like the father really gives a damn about his wife. I understand he has to be cool for his kid, but bro, at least show a little emotion. She starts rubbing his hair like she is his mother, saying everything's going to be okay, just go to sleep. That's when he keeps on saying, I miss mommy, I want mommy. Then our main protagonist, out of nowhere, just says, I think he likes you. Nigga, what? Bro, why are you acting like you don't have a goddamn wife, dog? He then asks her if she has kids, almost like he's already trying to find a replacement for his wife who is more than likely dead. I just wish at this moment our main protagonist can at least show some type of emotion that he misses his wife, and that he's not just trying to move on with Andrea from The Walking Dead already. I mean, seriously, it's been like a day. That is when Ali comes up to our main protagonist, David, and says that Joe is getting worse. And this is the character who accidentally lit himself on fire. We are shown an image of Joe, and his body
does not look good. His face is peeling, burned off. Joe starts to ask the members, do they still have that gun? Suggesting that he wants to die, that he cannot deal with this pain.